So everybody that's listening, if you have been listening on Rumble and on a few radio stations, getting this on about 8 or 9 stations out of the 20 because we've been talking about ideas and into doing interviews with people that are outside the box, we'll say in a nice way. So we do hope to always get it on more stations, but we're hitting 8, so 8 is better than 0. If you're listening to us on one of the podcasting sites, mostly Rumble, especially for this interview, although we're going to try to get this on YouTube too. Please share, subscribe, like, all that jazz. We really appreciate that. So, returning guest, if you're watching this and not listening to this, you'll see her face. And this is Shelby Hosana. She is the co-founder of Unjected.com. If you are not vaccine injured by the COVID-19 vaccine, or you have not got any kind of mRNA shot, period. I know there's RSV out there now, and God knows what's in the flu. Regardless of that, definitely check this out. These are people that have not got the mRNA shots and they're looking for love. So check it out. Shelby did start Unjected.com and she just put out a book. It's Burn Back Better. She'll be holding that up in just a second. It just details the experiences going on in Maui due to the fire. I have my own suspicions. I know she does. We're probably thinking of some of the same things. We'll talk about that throughout the interview, but go to unjected.com, at Unjected on Twitter and Instagram, I believe, maybe not, because of the
Unjected
censorship.
official. Yeah, they've deleted us so many times. So now we're unjected official there.
Okay, Unjected official for the moment. We'll see how that plays out, but you're safe on Twitter at Unjected. So Shelby, that was a lot there, but hey, it's always a pleasure having you on. I'm very grateful for you to always come on here and talk to us.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really thankful to get the word out about Maui and keep it in the light.
So let's talk about Maui because you live in Maui, but obviously there was big issues in Lahaina, and you do have some family there and friends there, of course. Tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about, first off, starting for people that don't know much about Hawaii, how far
Yeah.
Maui is to Lahaina in general.
Well, so Lahaina is on Maui. So actually,
Oh, okay. That shows
just
how
about
much I know about Hawaii. So we'll move
That's
forward with
okay.
that.
That we can start with our geography lesson there. So, Maui is of course, a gorgeous island. It's one of the most heavily tourist populated, visitor spots in the
Mhm.
world, and has been for a long time. Lahaina is on the west side of Maui,
Mhm.
and when I first moved here over 10 years ago, I did land in Lahaina. That was actually like my first stomping grounds, and I lived and worked off of Front Street, and so I became very familiar, with that beautiful town of Lahaina. And like you had said, yes, I have made so many friends that I would consider family, and then even my mom still worked in Lahaina, all these years later. I live on East Maui now, so it's about 30 miles away, kind of up on the volcano. So not too far, about a 45-minute drive. But she was still working in Lahaina and actually was there the day of the fire. And actually was one of the last people to essentially escape Front
Wow.
Street. And so, that was when she had come home that day, and had told me her experience, I knew right away that this was something nefarious. And I had reached out to Stephanie Perucci, our
Mhm.
co-author for the book on Burn Back Better, and immediately, the two of us were talking about what had happened, and it became apparent that we needed to help uh, keep this narrative to the truth of what really happened, help the Hawaiians get their land back if we can, and just make sure the story wasn't forgotten. And I'll stop rambling there for a minute, but that was essentially kind of where we started the initial birthing of Burn Back Better was the fact that my mom thankfully barely escaped that day.
We're going to get into all that because I want to ask you this question because we've heard all this talk, and I even go back to, I believe it was 2019. You would know the dates a little bit better than me, but Tulsi Gabbard, the congresswoman from Hawaii at that time, came on, a couple of stations, Fox, MSNBC, and talked about when they had that um those I believe, was it the siren that went off, and they were worried about, like, they were
The
telling people to
ballistic missile.
yeah, the ballistic missile, yes, and to shelter in place, and everybody started freaking out and going crazy and
Mhm.
stuff. That was in 2019, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Actually, no, it was before that. Excuse me. That was 2017.
Seven.
That was the
Okay,
ballistic
well, regardless,
missile. Yeah, but
regardless with the dates, it was around that time. So that happened, and that was supposed to be in play if something like this happened. And the sirens, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, because obviously you were there, I was not. The sirens did not go off. The roads became blocked. The police were not letting people in or out, with that said. So, just going back to your mom, and then you can kind of go more in detail about those situations and how they were supposed to happen. As far as the siren, they didn't, and how the police were blocking the roads and shutting people out. How did your mom get out of there? As you just stated, she was one of the last people out, but there was
yeah.
so many obstacles for her to even know where to go, how the heck to even get out.
Yeah, well, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to dive into all those pieces because you're right. The siren system is, yeah, it's actually crazy to think that it didn't go off. But my mom, she worked on the far end of Front Street and the south end of Front Street. So she should have been able to turn on that exit to leave towards the other side of the island. Like she was the furthest most exit point. So the fact that there was even a police barricade there is quite remarkable. But essentially, she goes to leave work, and there's, of course, a police officer there. There's cones. He claims that they are putting up a new electrical pole, mind you, in 80-mile-an-hour winds currently happening. 80 miles an hour. They're going to try to set the poles back up. And so she was just kind of directed essentially like a parade. There was no fear by the officer. There was not like an instilling fear in the air of what was happening, ominously. And she was directed back into Front Street, essentially into the line of cars. And she knew every single exit point because she had worked there for so many years. So thankfully, she had tried every little outlet, inlet, of course, to be met with another barricade or cones or police officers. Every exit out of Lahaina onto the bypass road was blocked. Eventually, she made it to the farthest end, North Front Street, which is like as far as she could have ended up. She ends up on the north end of Front Street. She decides something is wrong. She sees the smoke cloud coming down the mountain, and she goes, I think that they're parading us in to kill us. And it kind of hit her at that moment. And she stopped in the middle of the road. She turned her vehicle around. She made people stop. She flipped the car around, and she ended up making it back down towards Front Street where she had started. And by that point, a local had blown through the cones and she just followed and was able to get out. But she said there was only about 4 cars behind her and no cars came out after that. And the fire essentially, she made it out within about 15 minutes of the town being completely engulfed. And, actually, beknownst to that, the police officers were letting people into Lahaina. She had a picture of the line streaming into the smoke cloud. Absolutely not one police officer saying, don't go in there, while she and just 3 other cars were exiting out. So, well, one, there was just absolute uh whether you want to call it a miscommunication, the chaos of the traffic and the direction, and what we're finding now in the body cam recordings, hints at a lot of culpable things. But back to that siren, Hawaii has the most robust siren system in the whole entire world. And they're designed and they state on their website, which we get into in the book, and we actually provide screenshots of their website, that it is for lava, tsunamis, terrorist attacks, wildfires. So they state on their website it was designed to alarm people for a wildfire, yet it was never sounded. And unfortunately, it was the elderly and it was children at home, the most least able-bodied people that were, at home and not given any warning until they heard screaming from outside that there was an actual fire. And so I of course I think the siren, in my opinion, is the first red flag besides the barricades that they had hours to sound that, and they just plain didn't.
I want to just go a little bit back and backpedal a little bit to just tell
Yeah.
the audience that doesn't know much about Lahaina and Front Street. Can you give the audience a little bit of a picture, some background information on what Front Street is? I'm thinking it's like kind of a street that's got a lot of restaurants, shops. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
ever been to Key West. Have you been to Key West at
I
all?
haven't, but I would
Oh,
I would actually say it's probably that would be a fair comparison. Very like
okay.
slow vibes. It is just one little town road right along the ocean
Right.
side. Lots of like retail stores, mom and pop shops,
Right.
like you said, restaurants. There was not one corporate entity, maybe besides like Roxy, it was a very local and an old town feel. Like a lot of those buildings had been there and were the original standing buildings for hundreds of years. And so Lahaina in itself is very historic. It is actually the home to the Royal Hawaiians. It's where
Mm.
they lived, they gave birth to their children, because it was the most protected lands. West Maui in particular is uh, very, very safe in the way that our sister islands, Molokai, Lanai, and Kolave, block the waves. We have the West Maui Mountains that block windside. It just is very temperate. There used to be free flowing streams and fish ponds that were Lahaina, of course, before colonization and the plantation era took over and changed the scene. But it was there was only one road in, one road out, which is that lower Front Street Road. And then as of recently, about 2018, I want to say, they built the bypass road, which would kind of go over Lahaina. And so essentially, people were blocked from Front Street to getting to those bypass roads to leave and exit points, either going north towards like Hana Kauai or Kahana area, or going south towards East Maui.
And again, for people listening or watching this, Shelby Hosana, she's the co-founder of Unjected.com. Burn Back Better is what we're speaking about today. That's the book. And I would say get it at Unjected.com. Don't go to Amazon. Don't go
Oh,
to Barnes and
actually,
Noble.
go
Good.
to shopunjected.com. So that's
Okay.
actually our swag store and our we got the book there. So
Okay.
go there. But you can go find your love on unjected.com.
Okay. So shop Unjected.com. But can you find the shop store at Unjected.com? Will it lead you or no?
I don't think we have it linked up quite yet because we're in the middle of a
Okay.
little bit of renovations, but it will be soon.
All right, so shopunjected.com. We'll remember that then for the next time we read that off. I want to just go into the police situation. It seems like the
Yeah.
way you're describing this, Shelby, that the police was very lackadaisical, almost like they didn't care that there was we think of police, firemen, people in the military, mostly heroes, that they're putting their life on the line for the people of their community, the people of the country, whatever division you're serving in as far as that goes. But it seems like these police didn't really care much because if they saw this coming, they would have been trying to get people left and right out of there. let's talk about the police. What was going on there in your mind? Even your mom that was in the situation firsthand, what was she thinking when she was seeing all these police and all these other utility workers, as you were stating? And it seems like they really didn't give a damn about anything, almost like, we think that maybe they were in on this.
Yeah, and I don't want to take from of course, like you had said, there is law enforcement that absolutely
Correct.
is honorable, and we respect them and everything that they do. But, essentially, from what I've gathered and what we gathered, just in evidence in the book, is that they all claim that they were following orders, and they were following an order given by some sort of authority higher up figure. And mind you, the police chief on Maui is Pelletier, which you might recognize this name from the Las Vegas shootings a couple years
Right.
ago. And sure enough, he came over, got rehired on Maui. And, now we have the police chief, who's also, come from a previous massacre. And he's the ordained, you won't even believe this, coroner. He's the police chief and the coroner, which should be illegal. But mind you, he was the only authority figure that was on Maui the evening of the fire. All of our other public state officials, like the mayor, the governor, and all these other elected officials, were on Oahu practicing, guess what? Emergency simulations. Isn't that so eerily similar to 9/11? But, back to what they were actually doing, they were following an order. And what's interesting is Richard Bisson, the mayor, he had claimed that he didn't know about the fire for until 12 hours after, and he didn't even know there was a fatality.
Now, come
Who
on. Hold on.
who
Come on.
who
I mean,
is
we got
everybody?
cell phones,
I
TV. Come
know.
on,
It's
man.
it's insane. And Herman Andaya, he was the elected emergency management official. He never had any previous experience working emergency management. He was also on Oahu with everybody. He was the one that came on the screen and said, "Oh, well, we didn't siren the alarms because those are tsunami sirens, and we thought people would run into the fire." That was his legitimate answer as to why they didn't do it. And so we are seeing some body cam footage of that, of course, the cherry picked ones that they've released so far, where there is some officers doing great justice, and they are helping, and they are trying to evacuate neighborhoods. But the police officers that were shown on Front Street, in these barricades, those have still been redacted. We have yet to see that body cam footage, and I'm going to be really curious to see what it reveals. And it also shows that they were in constant communication the whole time, which is also contradictory to some of their claims that they didn't know that the fire was as bad as it was because they weren't in constant contact with EMS or fire or police. They, communications were down, and that was actually just a blatant lie from what we're finding out of the body cam footage. And later on in the evening, yes, there was officers finally going through neighborhoods with bullhorns once it was so
Yeah.
imminent that it couldn't be avoided any longer. But as far as the after recovery process too, that's where I also you kind of go into that next stage of the criminal investigation, as people were resorted to escaping their vehicles, escaping flames, and jumping into the seawall. And those people that lived were there for over 8 hours. And during that 8 hours, where was the military from Pearl Harbor? Hawaii is only, excuse me, Maui is only 100 miles from the biggest military base in Hawaii.
Mhm.
Where was the hospital ships? Where was the shifts with the water pumps? Where was the shifts bringing generators and help and water and supplies? They could have been on their way within 30 minutes or 15 minutes of getting this call. They could have been on their way with helicopters, anything that we needed. They were not called. They did not come for 8 hours. People left to drown in the water. And Coast Guard is also was telling people you would turn around or you will get shot. You are not allowed to go bring your boats over there. They, it's that first 24 hours of the fire, there's is so many orchestrated details that I believe, in my personal opinion, point towards pure premeditated murder. But we do leave it very objective in the book. We call them different camps. Some people are in camp one, some people are in camp two, and some people are in camp three, which are all kind of the different opinion facets. Was this natural? Was this premeditated? Was there technology used? Was there not? Was this just a tinderbox? There's so many questions to be asked, but when you start picking apart these dirty details of what actually happened that day, it's frightening. And my mom had described feeling very scrambled. She said that there was kind of this frequency in the air that there was just a sense of confusion. And even to one officer that she had tried to talk to, she actually physically got out of her vehicle, approached his car, waved, like, please, I would like to speak with you. And this man was almost like in a hypnotic state, wouldn't look at her, wouldn't communicate with her, and was also in a line of danger himself. So he wasn't using any critical thinking, even in his own self. So was there also something going on with the frequencies? Were they actually doing war games on Lahaina? Was this a big test for something a lot more nefarious? We erected a bunch of 5G towers really recently in Lahaina. They obviously have the technology to modify frequency, but something was making these law enforcement officers act out of character, whether it was purely brainwashing or incorrect orders, just falsely believing that everything was going to be okay. Maybe it was innocence, or maybe it is something more. Maybe there was a more reason to that.
I don't believe anything after COVID, so I don't know what
Exactly.
to think.
I'm right
That
there
was
with
Listen,
you.
I know you had the injury before that, and that kind of changed your way as far as medical freedom and stuff like that. This really changed me, and I've dove in deeper into whether it's Hawaii and heard some on the ground stories. I know you went on Taryn Gregson with the footage, talked about the stuff going on during that time. And it's not just Hawaii, it's many other things going on in this country that is
Yeah.
really insane. And
Yeah.
you can see where people can believe what you just stated to be true. We did get a lot of audience questions about the weather in Hawaii and the winds that, as you stated, were 80 miles per hour. Can you speak about the weather that day and how you just, said that it's like, was that area a tinderbox and that it just kind of swept through with those winds and the fire? Was the fire an issue because was there a drought and that's why it was a tinderbox? And also, can you talk about the winds? Because it seems, at least I personally never heard of any 80 per hour, mile per hour winds, excuse me, on Hawaii.
Right. Well, so that's a great point. And, interestingly enough, the day of the fire, it started towards the north point of Lahaina on a road called Lahaina Luna Road. They claimed it started early in the morning, or actually around 6:30, with a downed power line that created a hot spot, 6:30 a.m. Or even earlier. They left the fire to actually attend to the hot spot after it was contained. They left it to attend to active fires on my side of the island, which I live closer to upcountry Kula area. And that morning, I was actually awoken to my chicken coop, which is, mind you, like 200 pounds, had been tossed across my yard from the winds. And this
Wow.
was like on we live in a very windy area, and and this was abnormal for that morning. And I actually had even said to my mom, I don't think you should go to Lahaina that today. I said, this seems wrong. And, we had Hurricane Dora that was to the south of us. Mind you, it was 500 plus miles south. And these winds were coming from the north side. So, we should have had this influx of southern trade winds, a lot of surf and ocean side, actually to the west Maui and to the south side. But that wasn't happening at all. We were actually getting like almost like a wind machine on the top of Maui blowing downward, which is the opposite direction from where the hurricane actually was. If it, and then to cover their tracks even more, the NOAA, they actually erased the satellite images of the weather patterns the day of the whole time of the fire. There was a satellite image blackout, so there's actually no images of the weather system during the fire, which is I would say that that seems pretty on purpose. But you know, uh, particularly, we what we know and what we've learned about fire is fire likes to travel uphill, right? It goes up. This didn't happen. It went down and it burned down into Lahaina all the way down to the shoreline. So these winds were coming from the West Maui Mountains and being funneled down. And that's when the speculation comes in. Well, was that downward wind just extremely drying? Was that what aided these old buildings and burning? But there's anomalies that we found with the metals, with other pieces of materials that are melted nowhere near the fire, that kind of point towards maybe something else. But
Mhm.
actually in 2018, Lahaina is no stranger to fire. And in 2018, there was actually the previous fire, which had burned down 20 homes. And during that time, they had actually drafted the county, Maui County, come together to create a management plan for West Maui and fire preventative measures. Guess what? They decided to leave it in a draft and they didn't publish it. So, and when we got this version of the draft, guess what it says? Every single thing that they stated, not appropriate roadways for exits, every they go through and basically talk about how this whole town could be burned to the ground, but essentially did nothing about it. And does that yet again point at premeditated murder? They literally posted and printed and came together and made a draft about how it was going to happen.
Well, for sure, it's bad government. For 100% sure with that. And I just want to keep going into these audience questions too, because we did get a lot. So when we talk about the fire, and this could be into, I've learned about this recently that the government can control the weather. And there's
Yep.
been issues where there's been hurricanes and then all of a sudden they disappear.
Uh,
That is, yeah. So, I mean, we could go down that road too. I'm sure that we're on agreement with that. But I also want to go into the celebrities that have property in that area of Hawaii, mainly Oprah for sure. And
mhm.
that none of their property got burned down. It just the fire just went around their property and hit these other areas, almost like a video game or a pinball game where things just go all different directions. Very
Yeah.
suspect there. So between the issue of the government maybe controlling the weather, as you stated, could be war games, could be all kinds of things that we might not even be able to wrap our minds around because we just don't know. There's things that we just can't even comprehend that are going on with these mad scientists. I think of Dr. Evil from Austin Powers and stuff, and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But if you could elaborate a little bit on that, with these people that live on the island that have are very well off, that their
Yeah.
properties are fine and dandy right now, and the regular common working person over there, their property, their store, their establishment as far as business is gone. It just burned down.
Right. Well, maybe it's purely coincidence, but a lot
Pure
of
luck.
these celebrities, yeah. Actually, Oprah's home actually is nearby where I live on East Maui. So she has a large property in Kula. Mind you, we're not going to escape her from this. There is rumor that she had actually hired a private firefighting team a week prior to any of the fires starting. And mind you, we lost quite a bit of homes up here in Kula as well. So there was fires all over the island. Lahaina was devastated, but there was also fire here. Oprah had a private firefighting team. Since then, she has not opened up her home to anybody. She went around initially passing out like pillows from Costco that like didn't even have pillowcases on them. And it was pathetic. And then she went around like with The Rock and they created this fake foundation. But, like as far as some of these other celebrities, truly they didn't have homes on Front Street. So, mind you, maybe that's just, maybe they knew that. But Lahaina was home to uh, generational local Hawaiians that had this, in their hands for a long time. And, these were the people that were not going to be sold out. They were going to pass these down to their children. And, I've heard it be called the second most valuable real estate in the whole entire world. So, uh, maybe they didn't have their homes there because we're waiting for this moment to build on them now that the land is fully cleared. But it, it's truly a tragedy to, in the next part, what we're seeing is that, these people, these survivors, the ones that are left over, they're getting denied insurance claims. And, the next part of the land grab is already beginning, which we dive into the book, deeply about, with the way that Josh Green, the governor, had basically before the fires in July signed emergency proclamations to give him carte blanche ability to seize land if a natural disaster occurred. I mean, it just goes so deep down this rabbit hole. It's sickening, and so that's also something that we just also hope people realize is that they
Yeah.
orchestrate these things long before they happen. Because they have to put it out in the open for us, but it's just our job to find it.
Shelby, what happened to Barack Hussein Obama that was born in Hawaii, that was America's son, and
Yeah,
now he just disappeared? He's
yeah.
running the Biden administration, we know that, but besides that point, how come he hasn't done anything for Hawaii?
Not one thing, right? I mean, I think he's got family ties to Oahu, or he claims. But
Yeah, he claims.
yeah, where is anybody? And Bezos, he's got a multi-million dollar house down in McKenna here on Maui, which actually is eerily close to the Amos computer facility system, which runs our directed energy weapon here on our volcano. Which, if you want to get into all that, you'll have to read it in the book. But mind you, he gave $100 million to some Maui Foundation. Nobody has received any of that money. So where is it going? Because that's not getting to the people.
Yeah, it's truly sad. I do want to talk about this because I want to talk about the children issue in a minute because I believe, and I know this may be thought of as maybe some kind of kabuki theater here, but I do believe that there could be some child trafficking going on with
Yeah,
this issue. We'll get into that in just a second. I
yeah,
do want to talk about the stories of the survivors and how they're different from the media. That I'm sure you've heard these stories as you live there, and people that have went through this giving very different stories, such as yourself, to the people listening and viewing this than
yeah,
what is heard in the media.
yeah. one of the biggest differences that I've heard and discrepancies that continues is the actual uh, people who have perished, the victim count, the body count. There is so much discrepancy, because truly, in my opinion, I believe that it's hundreds or more, and even could be thousands. And
Yeah.
I have many people that also believe this and saw that with their own eyes, or pulled out 100 people out of the water themselves. And, you know, then there's this official count of 100 people. And it's like almost statistically impossible. Lahaina's census, they said it was a little over 13,000. But when you count in the migrant workers that were in Lahaina and tourists and just the amount of people, there could have been closer to 17,000, 20,000 people in Lahaina. And mind you, these migrant workers would not be counted on a census. They did not speak English. They lived 20 people in a home, and those homes are gone. And you're going to tell me they all escaped without a siren? Just the amount of cars on Front Street alone was like, I believe, 240 cars, but there's only 100 victims. So that means everybody in those cars lived. The numbers don't make any sense. And, people, we all believe as, locals that there is a discrepancy. But then I feel like this is why I bring up the fact of war games, because Maui is if you were military ops wise, we are in the middle of the ocean, 2,500 miles away from any other landmass. You can cut off communications, you can cut off supplies, you can change the narrative of the story. You can also hit us with frequencies that people can't feel other places. You can modify the weather here that wouldn't happen other places. And what can you do? You could manipulate the population psychologically. And, when authority figure says something, what is 80% of the population will go with that? They don't have the
Yeah.
critical thinking skills. And I feel like in this moment, it's kind of like, can hundreds to thousands of people be missing? And can you convince the general population that did not occur just because somebody went on a TV and told you it was 100? And that I feel like that's kind of what they wanted, and that's why they built and erected a large fence all the way around Lahaina in the days after the fire, instead of helping look for survivors or be of use. They built a criminal investigation. I call it the riot fence, because I think they wanted to see, will the people do anything? Can you shake up the jar of ants, and will they figure out who the perpetrator was? And sadly, that hasn't happened yet. But that's also why the cover, Lahaina is this a perfect storm or a perfect crime, because this is what's happening all around the world. Lahaina is just one petri dish. This is happening in Greece. This has happened in Paradise, California. This is happening all over. Just Acapulco 2 weeks ago was flattened. Conveniently, they were on the smart city list earlier this year, just like Maui was. So are these places that are these smart city templates? Are we being flatlined right now? Is there some, grand plan that's, kind of being unfolded before our very eyes?
Listen, we saw all this during COVID that, as you stated, no one has a critical thought. No one puts on their critical thinking cap. It's really sad. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Because, again, and I just was talking to somebody about this with the shot last night that's fighting very hard against this stuff. And he, never got even vaccinated. And he was telling me, he said, I wish we would get a lot of these people from the churches on. And I said, yeah. I said, well, me too. I said, it's really sad. The American people should be in the streets fighting to know
Yep.
what the hell is going on in this country, whether it was COVID, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the homeless people on the street, the migrant issue that's going on right now with all these illegal immigrants going around here in New York City, around the country. It's
Yeah.
really sad. Hawaii too. And no one really gives a damn. They're worried about what Kim Kardashian's wearing. I don't even know what the great TV show that people get their kicks out of now, but what's going on those shows instead of really what's going on with your pocket. Where is
Yeah.
your money going? Where is Yeah, we'll cruise through this very fast. All right, so we had a little snafu the other day. We're back here with Shelby Hosana again, unjected.com, at unjected on Twitter. Definitely check her out there. She just did write a book, Burn Back Better. We're trying to finish off this conversation here, and you can see it if you're watching this, if you're listening to it. Just look up Burn Back Better on Amazon. I think it's on Amazon, correct, Shelby?
It
Or no?
is. Yep, on
Okay.
Amazon or shopunjected.com.
Shopunjected.com. Very good. And we hope that you buy it on shopunjected.com before
Exactly.
Amazon.
Exactly.
Anyways, we'll move forward with the last few questions in general. So, can you give an update to the audience about what is going on the ground now in Hawaii?
Well, I wish I could tell you that it's improved and, the assistance from the government has picked up in some way, but it hasn't at all. And, we still have thousands of people being, housed in resorts. And
Hmm.
it's not that the resorts aren't, enough comfortable enough of a living, but the Red Cross, FEMA, they actually are having these people basically as prisoners. If you are being staying as a survivor, you have to be subject to random room searches at any time. You are not allowed to have any guests come to your room. You cannot have like food, like if you want a DoorDash delivered, that is not allowed. That would be grounds to get you kicked out of your temporary housing, which is, just absolutely insane. They're not allowed to use the gym or pool facilities. You are only allowed to go to your room and nothing else, which is, very just, there's just no compassion. And, we do have an amount of short-term rentals here on the island. It's about 2,500 short-term rentals through Airbnb. And there's kind of this moment where a lot of the local community is petitioning for these rentals to be used for housing for survivors. And, morally, I totally understand it. And I think that the Airbnb should want to. But the issue is the government is not incentivizing it.
Right.
And so they're not, consenting, and saying, yes, we want this. Instead, we're kind of seeing this interesting moment where they're giving Airbnbs the moment to say, we will or we won't. But if they don't, the government might kind of eminent domain on your property anyways. And Richard Bisson, the mayor, has talked about them using government authority to seize these Airbnb rentals to house survivors in. And, I just find that to be a really slippery slope, giving the government the ability to use a property that is, being used through a private entity. And then now, say one, we'll kick out whoever's in there and put somebody else in. It's a slippery slope. And so, right now we have a massive amount of suicides. There's just no financial assistance happening to the people. There's been all of these funds going around, 100 million here, 300 million here, but no one has received any money, on top of the insurance issues that they're having where they're not getting nearly enough for their properties than compared to what they were worth. It's just accumulation of it's bad. It's really bad. And so right now I feel like there's kind of this interesting moment where there's an exodus happening, and it's sad to see, because not everybody can withstand this red tape and this government just atrocity of a recovery process that they're giving to these survivors. And part of that, the light at the end of the tunnel, I'll say, is that we are going to try to hold these people accountable in any means possible that we can. And, there actually hasn't been any criminal lawsuits filed. They've all been civil lawsuits. And so actually, Burn Back Better and my mom and many other survivors, we've actually filed a criminal indictment. We will be against everybody. So, we're not going to just like let this go under the wayside and say like we don't see what is happening here. Um, yeah, just it's crazy. It's crazy, Rob.
Yeah, and just to kind of put the exclamation point on this, Shelby, because RFK Jr. running for president, he's my guy. But besides that point, he's been talking a lot about Vanguard and BlackRock and how
Hmm.
they're buying up a lot of farmland in this country, in
Yeah.
Ukraine. The list goes on, and that these companies, BlackRock, Vanguard, and there's a couple other companies that are in cahoots with them too. They own the politicians. They own like half of the freaking world, if you want to
Yeah.
truly be honest. And there's
True.
talk about this being a land grab now in Hawaii of what happened, and that these companies have so much money, they can just swoop in and take control and do whatever they want with that land, whether it's building high rises or God knows what else, the other
Yeah.
ideas they have. But are you hearing stuff like that? That this could be some sort of land grab by these big corporations?
I feel like it's absolutely part of, the consequence of what's happened, whether, it was premeditated or not. This land was the second most valuable piece of property in the world, is what it's been labeled. And it's just pristine, gorgeous oceanfront, and it's been held in the hands of generational Native Hawaiians for thousands of years. And there was no corporations on Front Street. These were mom and pop stores, restaurants, boutiques that were, just they're not making millions of dollars, but they are living a thriving life, and we're part of an older community. And just how they erase history in the past, all of these buildings were over 100 years old, and they had so much old architecture. And you're never going to be able to rebuild this city the way it was, this close to the ocean. Even regulations wouldn't allow you to do that. And so, for them to clear the land and then the insurance companies not do right by the people, and then there is a moratorium right now on sales. So technically, no one's supposed to be able to come and purchase like, big pieces of land unless the governor approves it. So that's kind of the fine print there, is that, sales can still continue as long as it's approved. And, if these people, and by people being the local and homeowners and the Hawaiians, if they can't withstand this horrible, you know, like process they're putting them through, I can understand why they would, if they're offered something, that's how it plays out. It's not even so much that the corporations are trying to be like, you know, but they just kind of wait it out and they see what happens. And, then they kind of strike when the iron's hot. And that's what's so evil and nefarious about it, is that, we could, the government throws so much money through their money laundering in Ukraine, Israel, and it's like, they sent a measly $12 million to Maui when 6 billion accidentally got lost, just accidental, funds. It's just crazy. So it just seems to me it's on purpose. And so that does point towards a land grab to me. And, when humans don't have a fair playing field, they've always used fire to get what they want. Since the beginning of time, we've been burning down civilizations to take over. And, is that any different than we're seeing now? Maybe not.
Well, as you stated, if it's up to the governor of who gets access to this land, if these companies or people in power are donating millions of dollars to his a PAC or him personally as far as his political campaigns, or this guy has aspirations to run for, and I don't know what his term is or what the term limit situation is in Hawaii, regardless of that, running for governor again, running for the U.S. Senate down the road,
Mhm.
they'll owe him that. If he gives them, it's like a,
Yep.
quid pro quo back and forth. We saw this many times through
Put it in
political
the
history.
pocket.
Yeah, and
Yep.
especially in the past few years with the Bidens in general. But besides that, this guy could be the guy that could change that whole island in general. And not even
Yeah.
just that, as you stated, if someone is down on their luck and they need money and they just want
Yeah.
this to end, you could give them, five, $6,000 maybe, and they might just say, "Screw it," I'll take the loss. So I'll give them $100,000. Screw it, I'll take the loss. You get these people so far down on their luck that they'll
Yeah.
do anything. That
Yeah.
even we say $500 or $1,000 for property. Obviously, that's crap. But if somebody is so far down that they can't get anything, they can't have a place to live, stay, whatever, and you got them by the throat, that's it. Game, set, match. They'll do whatever the hell you want.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, that might seem far fetched, but that could even happen too. It could even go down as far as that. It's truly sad. But
It is. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
so let's just go to this last question. We've talked a lot in the interview today about many, many things, but can you talk about what you hope people learn when they read Burn Back Better?
Yeah. What I hope people learn, one, is about, of course, the history of Hawaii, because I feel like no one really understands how Hawaii became Hawaii. It's just kind of like this mystical tropical state, and you think like coconuts and pineapples, but this was a stolen, annexed land taken by gunpoint from Queen Liliuokalani from the Hawaiian people. And this is not the shiny rainbow story that in the US thinks it is. And now we're at this point where the land is where it is. And I pray that people will see that this land should be given back to the Hawaiians first and foremost. It's been stolen for far too long, and we don't need this US government, telling them what to do anymore. And, even if that means like someone like myself would need to ask for permission to live here, like that's what it would be like, because, this is a different place, and, and Hawaii should be cherished as such. But mostly, this is when, Burn Back Better is the play on the words of Build Back Better, because we've heard this statement over and over again. We're going to build it back better. We're going to build it back better. You hear it from every single one of them. And it's like this brainwashing uh of really, their plans to take over kind of right under our nose. And really they burn it, they blame it, and then they take it. And that's really what it is. And that's Burn Back Better. And just because it was Lahaina this time, it could be any town, anywhere. We've seen this with East Palestine, Ohio. We've seen this in Texas. We've seen this in California. We see it in Greece. We see it in other countries like Acapulco. It just was destroyed on the smart city list. So this is a large scale plan by the globalists, by the elitists, whatever you want to call them. But, they do put everything in the open for us. And, like, for example, Josh Green with his proclamations that he had signed, and, the smart city conferences he had attended. I wish all of us maybe could have seen through the lines a little bit more. But now what we can do is we can say, this was a blueprint, obviously, for them that they were using to see what can we pull off. But we could use this as a blueprint for us as freedom fighters to say, we're tired of mass murder through disaster capitalism. We've had enough of this. We see what you're up to, and calling out the criminals before they burn us into anywhere. It's now or never, really. And like I said, when there's not a fair playing ground. They use fire, and I think that's why they're using fire against us, because we're waking up as a civilization. Like, the consciousness is rising, and they would rather burn us out or start wars than for us to continue, awakening to the plan. So, that's really what I hope Burn Back Better does, is just help lift the veil a little bit more and bring even more consciousness to how we can stop this evilness before it gets any further.
Well, I think a lot of people have, woken up, especially through the past 3 years, especially through Ukraine, especially through Israel.
Yeah.
And with Hawaii now, there's been people waking up with that story too. I know it hasn't been covered to the extent it should be covered, but there's a lot of independent journalists that have went down there and tried to do the best. And obviously, you're doing your part in that area in general. But with that said, if people want to help Hawaii, what should they do? Because again, there's a lot of con men and con women out there that are saying, we see that with Oprah and The Rock. We talked about that earlier on in the interview, that
Yeah.
they're, going to help everybody in the kitchen sink. And then you're telling something totally different from on the ground. So, we hear about the Red Cross and all that stuff, but then you look that the money's not getting to the right people.
Yeah.
So a regular layperson doesn't know where the hell to go to help somebody in dire straits in Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, the first thing you can do, no matter what your means, is definitely just share about Maui, keep Maui in the news cycle. Don't stop asking questions about what happened. There's still evidence that's like rolling out. And, we assume, Burn Back Better is going to be multiple volumes as it increases over time, just with the sheer amount of evidence there is. But, so one, I would say that just, keep it in the 24-hour news cycle if you can. And otherwise there's a lot of there's actually a Venmo page out there called Lahaina Ohana Venmo. I really love that one because it shows all the individual families, what they've been through. You can get to the money to them directly, which of course that's way more beneficial than trying to do some corporation or like Red Cross garbage. um so, I would definitely recommend probably just going straight to their Venmos. And if you just get on Instagram or even Facebook, you'll be able to find those groups. We have one that's going through. We actually have a little QR code to it on our book here, but we have with Jimmy Levy, the singer-songwriter, just to, help other superstars that we've seen in the community, by helping them with cash money. But um, yeah, definitely do just due diligence. Like those Maui Strong, like that. I heard that nonprofit has $500 million in it, but not anybody has gotten anything. It's like, what in the world? Where is this? Like, I've heard billions of dollars of funding has come to Maui, but it's crazy. It's like it's money laundering as we speak. It's insane.
Well, I'll end on this. I'm sure the homeowners rates are going to go sky high, if they're not already sky high due to
Yeah.
this going on. So, we talk about the land grab. There's going to be more people that are going to be pushed out that maybe they were not affected by
Yeah.
the fire, but due
Yes.
to the homeowner insurance issue, it's going to go sky high, and these people are going to have to probably leave in
Yep.
general. So we talk about more of a land grab coming on due to this. So it's
Yeah.
kind of scary what's going on. But as you stated, these people have all the power, and we can try to fight back the best way we can, but it's extremely hard to fight against billions of dollars and politicians that have no spine whatsoever, from local level to up at the top, federal, state government, the list goes on and on. They have no spine whatsoever,
True.
except, very, very few group of people as far as that goes. So it's truly sad. But anyways, we wish you well in the fight. This will not be the last time you're on the
Thank
program,
you.
Shelby. Again, Shelby
Thank you.
Hosana. She is the co-founder of Unjected.com. Burn Back Better. Again, shop Unjected.com. Definitely get it there. Amazon if you wish, but we hope you go through Unjected because the profits will definitely get to the right place in general, and at Unjected on Twitter. So Shelby, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it. And happy Thanksgiving to you and your Ohana today.
All right, thanks so much. Appreciate you, Shelby, and happy Thanksgiving
Thanks.
to you also.
Bye.